Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Sleepless Cinematic Podcast, where we explore our shared love for watching and discussing movies recorded in the late after-work hours, often in lieu of a good night's rest. I'm Emilio.
I'm Julian.
And I'm Madeline. The three of us are colleagues at a Midtown Manhattan music school. Yes, music is what brings us together, but movies are what keep us together talking at the end of the night. So we've created some order to this ongoing trend by recording these conversations, considering an overarching theme while we cycle through 5 unique guidelines for engagement.
In addition to these main episodes, we record and release bonus one-off episodes as we see fit. While we do this, you, the listener, can count on the three of us doing what we've grown to love, foregoing sleep for a discussion about movies every other week.
And this week, we start our current news cycle of movies related to musicians on film with a category that we call The Unanimous, where we revisit a movie that the three of us have all seen before and see if our initial opinions still stand, if they've changed, or if discussing the movie will make us see things that we didn't see before. This is pretty exciting. We have teased maybe this episode for quite a while. We are finally getting around to it. We are talking about Nashville. I don't know what you want to call this. This movie is such a genre-less film.
Absolutely. It's
Yes.
an epic.
It is
That's, I think, the only word that I can think of.
Absolutely, yes. It's Robert Altman's film from 1975.
Epic, slice of life, musical,
Yes.
extravaganza.
Extravaganza is a good word.
Yeah.
Good, yes.
And remind me, third Best Picture nominee we've covered from this year?
I
Third.
think so.
Yes.
Third.
Following
Absolutely.
Dog Day Afternoon and One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, the
Yes.
winner of the award from that year. And that's the episode where we first teased this, talking about this film.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
We were all asking ourselves, like, what would we choose from that Best Picture pool? What's our Best Picture? And I think we unanimously agreed, Nashville.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
Honestly, I have to say that still stands. But after revisiting Dog Day Afternoon, very, very close second.
Yeah, also an excellent movie.
Yeah.
And One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, also excellent movie.
Yeah,
It's a great pool.
Jaws and
pool.
Barry Lyndon, we're coming for you next.
I think we are.
Yes.
It should be said, by the way, that this movie is not to be confused with the television series Nashville, which ran from 2012 to 2018, stars Connie Britton and Hayden Panettiere. Is that how you pronounce her name?
Yes.
Okay,
Correct.
very cool.
That's not a show that I've watched any of, but I feel like Hayden Panettiere was an actor that was floating around in the earlier 2000s and a lot of things that were marketed towards me as a teen girl.
She was in Heroes, I think, too.
She was in Heroes,
Yeah.
yes.
And she can sing, right? That's part of her deal?
I guess.
Okay. Because I know that Connie Britton can sing.
Yeah.
And so
I know
guessing.
that they force a lot of these young stars, particularly at that time, like Disney kids, to learn to sing.
Right, to be triple threats and stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah. That television show, there might be some Barbara Jean and Connie White energy going on there, but this is not the Nashville that we're going to speak about today.
Yeah. And this film is also not to be confused with Asheville, which is a town where I have previously lived and where, Emilio, I know you have familial connections.
I do, yes. Yeah, rather new ones.
And I have to say, and you may get this as well, constantly when I'm like, oh yes, I used to live in Asheville. People are like, did you say Nashville? It's like, I need to put more of a space between in Asheville.
No, you did a really nice job there when you just said it. You're
Yes.
like in Asheville. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
I've had a lot of practice.
And speaking of that end sound, should also not be confused with Nebraska, the Alexander Payne film from 2013 starring Bruce Dern. I haven't seen this film, but, we're already talking about locations in America. And, as the crow flies, Nebraska is, it's closer to Nashville than New York is. So
I guess that's true.
Probably.
Although, I'll give it
I'd
to
have
you.
to look at a map.
That's a fair point. Similarly, I mean, there's, American cities come up in quite a few titles of media. But another one is, this film is not to be confused with Biloxi Blues, which, has another southern city in its title and, blues music, even though, to my understanding, that movie is not really about music.
Not about that. Yeah, I think blues is more of the state of mind of the
Sadness.
characters.
Yeah.
Yeah. We shouldn't confuse this also with a film that came out in 1976 called Nashville Girl. Is anybody familiar with this?
No.
This seems, by its description, to be something of an exploitation version of some of the stuff that happens in the movie that we're going to talk about today. If that's your thing,
Interesting.
check it out and write to us. sleeplesscinematicpod@gmail.com. I'm not going to see this, but I'm curious what those connections might be.
Cool.
Because apparently there are many.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And content-wise, this is not to be confused with a book that I read last year, written by Dolly Parton and James Patterson, who collaborated
I've heard about this.
on
That
this
is-
novel.
What? My brain just exploded.
Called Run, Rose, Run, which is set in Nashville and kind of follows an up-and-coming country star. I'm sure that there are many books and films and television series that follow the music industry of Nashville. And this film that we're talking about, Nashville, is one of them, as is the novel Run, Rose, Run by Dolly Parton and James Patterson.
Cool.
Yeah.
Love it. When did we first see this movie? Because this is, I don't know, man, this is such a unique experience watching this movie. I remember it very vividly for myself. Well, how about you guys?
I think I watched this for the first time during the pandemic, like early pandemic. This was a movie that Dougie really loves, and I think was like, you have to watch this movie. And so I believe it was a time when we had a lot of time on our hands.
Got it.
I think when we watched this movie, like early pandemic.
Yeah. Pandemic is a nice time to watch a near 3-hour-long movie.
Exactly.
Yep.
Well, I've seen this movie 2 times before, ahead of watching it for this episode. And one of those viewings was during the pandemic as well. But my very first viewing of it, eerie coincidence that I have with watching this movie, this is my 3rd time seeing it, and all 3 of those viewings have been in presidential election years.
Interesting.
Yeah, this is an every 4-year movie for me, though after this viewing, I'm thinking maybe every 1 year. I like it that much.
It's a great film.
Yeah,
Very
but
nice.
yeah, the first time I saw it was in 2016. In the summer of that year, when I was home from college, and BAM in Brooklyn was doing a series of election movies that summer, given the election that was on the horizon. And so there were 2 films I saw as part of that series. The other was All the President's Men, quite appropriately.
Yep.
And then
Kind of
there was
tangentially an
Yeah.
election.
Yeah.
Although this film too is kind of tangentially an election film.
Yeah,
too,
there's
so.
an election
Yep.
and
like,
an
primary.
unseen
Yeah.
character
Right.
running.
Right. Yeah. And so that was the first time that I saw Nashville on 35 millimeter, if I remember correctly. And I remember thinking after I watched it, well, I found it very impressive, but on some level, I kind of didn't know what hit me.
Absolutely.
Totally.
I am so glad that we chose to watch this film and talk about it. I squeezed in 2 more viewings in the last couple of weeks. And I think that they are so essential to even beginning to understand this film. I think the first time I watched it, I was much like you, Julian. I was so blown back by what I had seen that I wasn't entirely sure how to process it, and I hadn't rewatched it since then. So I think it really started to click into place for me these last 2 weeks.
Nice.
Yeah. And in many respects, there are things about this movie that when I was watching it for the first time, there were things I was trying to put together about it that now I understand you're not really meant to tie together. You're kind of just meant to let them exist as a viewer.
Yeah.
What you see is what you get.
Yeah. My first time seeing it was, I've talked a lot on this podcast about my first semester of freshman year at NYU. This was a second semester viewing.
Ooh.
It was a movie that I had just kind of heard about, had been kicking around. So I went to the Avery Fisher Center, which is in the Bopes Library, and I just fired it up. Similar to you guys, feeling like I didn't quite know exactly what I saw. It left a really deep impression on me from a standpoint of I'd never seen a movie like this. I'd
Yeah.
never seen a movie try to fit as much as this movie does fit in to quote a narrative. Yeah, a lot of things hit me upon the first time watching it. This is my first time seeing it again since.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, it's just one of those movies that I think has sat in my brain for years and years. You know, it's just one of those quintessential 70s movies. It's peak Robert Altman, so to speak. Yeah, this is a classic.
Totally.
Yeah.
Question for you guys. Have you been to Nashville?
Yes.
No.
It's
Okay.
been a while, but yes, I've been.
Did
Yeah.
you go to the Grand Ole Opry?
I didn't. I think I went to that one strip where there are a bunch of places. It
Yeah.
was like the Bluebird Cafe. I remember going and thinking it was really fun, but I think that was like 25 years ago at this point.
I've only been once, even though, yes, I grew up in North Carolina, but North Carolina and Tennessee are both fairly long states. Like, I'd have to look it up exactly, but I mean, the distance between my hometown and Nashville is probably not that much shorter than the distance between my hometown and here in New York City.
Yeah.
So you're not just going to pop over there. So I went in college with a performance group that I was in called the Catamount Singers. I was a singer, and Electric Soul was our band. So we were Cat Singers and Electric Soul.
Nice.
So we went on tour and we stopped in Nashville and we did go to the Grand Ole Opry, and I saw Leanne Rimes.
Nice.
And she was great.
Yeah. She seems like somebody who would be really great live. Yeah.
Yeah. And as we begin this cycle on musicians on film, well, we're going to go across a few different musical genres throughout each of these films we discuss. And Nashville, of course, is a movie about predominantly country music. And it's not. I mean, really, it's not the only thing that appears in the film. I mean,
we get gospel music.
We do get gospel to the extent that folk music is a different genre. I mean, we get that.
Right.
It's
They try to
country
differentiate
folk.
a little bit.
Yeah. And so venues such as the Grand Ole Opry, which is a Nashville institution, appear in the film. I guess now, may I give my brief summary of just what's going on in this movie?
Dude,
You can attempt.
You have my blessing. Go for it.
All right. So Nashville follows an ensemble of roughly 24 characters over the course of 5 days in the titular city. These characters are predominantly performers of country, folk, and gospel music, and those who don't perform or promote said music eagerly spectate. Alongside the slice of life look at the Nashville music scene is the presidential campaign of unseen replacement party candidate Hal Philip Walker, whose campaign truck ties many of the film's disparate scenes together. We follow these many characters through such events as a singer's airport arrival, a freeway car pileup, a house party, and numerous musical performances ranging in scale from tightly packed clubs to an unpredictable political rally.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we do need to bounce off the last thing you said, which is if you are listening and you have not seen this movie for some reason, you may think this is a movie that could not be spoiled, and that is untrue.
That's correct. Something happens in the last 20 minutes.
Yeah,
that-
there is a very large event at the end that can be very shocking. And if you have not seen it, spoiler alert, I'm assuming we will get into this
Definitely.
discussion.
Yes. And so, we're talking a little bit about this film in the greater Robert Altman oeuvre, however you say that word. And I mean, I think most people consider Nashville to be Robert Altman's masterpiece. I certainly agree with that. I may not be the only film of his that I'd call a masterpiece, but it's certainly top of the line Robert Altman. And what's quite interesting about that, especially considering the time that it comes out in, is that, yes, Altman is this icon of 70s auteur cinema, but pulling from a book that I have brought back for this conversation, an old favorite, Michael Schulman's Oscar Wars.
Thank you, Michael Schulman.
It could not be suppressed any longer.
It could not.
No.
But so Robert Altman saw himself in contrast to figures like Stanley Kubrick, who were so exacting. I think the exact quote is he said that he admired Stanley Kubrick, but he couldn't say that he liked him.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And if I remember correctly, I don't know if your book will talk about this or not, because I don't know that it's Oscars related, but obviously Shelley Duvall in this movie. Shelley Duvall also in Altman's Popeye, which is very fun. I don't think either of you guys have seen
No, I haven't yet.
Altman's Popeye.
I've seen bits of it on TV.
I recommend it. I think
Yeah.
it's a good old time.
Okay,
Robin
cool.
Williams playing Popeye, can't go wrong there.
Right.
If I remember correctly, Altman kind of felt like he had claimed her as like one of his actors that he intended to continue to use. And I believe that her going over to The Shining with Kubrick, I think he took as kind of a slight.
Oh.
But I
Is
have
this sort of like John Hughes and Molly Ringwald?
perhaps.
Okay.
Yeah. Maybe there was some intended pettiness on Shelley Duvall's part there too.
Maybe. But yeah, I was just thinking about you talking about they obviously have very different styles of films, but also I think very different directorial styles. This film is so slice of life, whereas Kubrick famously does, 10,000 takes to get the perfect everything.
Which I think history has shown that it hasn't really, that approach to filmmaking wasn't maybe the best thing for Shelley Duvall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So as he organized the cast into the titular city to film in the summer of 1974, He said, among other things, "More than anything, I want you to have a good time this summer. You've all read the script. Now I want you to put it down and forget about it." And so then, as he was actually filming these scenes, I mean, he would say himself that he considered them more as events rather than scripted scenes. He would just stage these events and film them. That I'm not pulling that from Oscar Wars. That's from the DVD commentary. And then as he was filming said events, now I'm pulling from Oscar Wars. According to Michael Murphy, who played a political advance man, Altman told the actors, "All right, I put all my money into film stock. Take these characters as far as you want to take them. But if you bore me, I'll just cut to somebody else." Altman's approach here, though it's not identical, it made me think quite a lot of the film that we started our previous cycle with.
I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah, I think Richard Linklater is a much looser sort of presence as a director, even than Altman, which is saying something because Altman's pretty loose. But there was, a little bit of like a cavalier energy to Altman that I don't think is quite matched by Richard Linklater. Not to say that he isn't innovative, but Linklater's more like chill dude hanging out.
Right. I think that you hit on a really important connection there, which is I think both filmmakers were way more interested in the actors finding the characters themselves than necessarily digging into the script and trying to pull it out. I think I heard something to the effect of Robert Altman. I don't know if he actually asked people to tear up the scripts, but essentially told them, we're not using them. It's up to you guys now, essentially.
Yeah.
I think for some actors, being told that feels very liberating. And maybe for others isn't very exciting.
Yeah, very intimidating.
Yeah,
for others.
exactly.
And just to the point, there is a lot of music that was written specifically for the film by the film's composer, Richard Baskin, who appears in several different scenes in the film.
He's
does.
Frog, right?
He's Frog, the session musician in the...
Who can't play the piano.
Yes, in the opening
In the
scene.
eyes of Haven Hamilton.
Yeah.
Haven Hamilton, sorry.
Yeah, in the opening scene of recording the song 200 Years.
Yeah, he gets razzed pretty heavily.
But a lot of the actors in the film were musically inclined themselves. I think it shows very abundantly, and they wrote many of their own songs.
Yeah.
I'm going to pose this question to the two
Okay.
of you.
Do
Do
it.
either of you know the origin story for the songs "I'm Easy" and "It Don't Worry Me"?
Other than the same songwriter for both.
Keith Carradine.
Keith Carradine, who appears as Tom in the film. In the spring of 1969, Keith Carradine was, as I understand, basically couch surfing around the country as a working musician. He landed in New York and made his way into the cast of the musical Hair.
Yes.
Nice.
And he was in the cast with Shelley Plimpton, who he fell in love with, even though she had a husband who things were not working out with.
Sounds a little bit like art imitating life.
Yeah, absolutely. And to quote Oscar Wars yet again, Carradine was cast in the musical's Tribe of Hippies. Plimpton was married to a castmate, but the relationship was rocky, and Carradine saw an opening. Idling in his brother David Carradine's hotel room with his Gibson, he picked out a song that might win Shelley's heart. Breezy and yearning, it made love seem like a no-brainer. Carradine called it "I'm Easy." The song did its job.
Wow.
It
Okay.
did. And it don't
Score
worry
one
me.
for the guy with the guitar.
Score one. And then eventually I think he wrote "It Don't Worry Me" around the same time. There's not quite the same story to my understanding about it, but then over time he moved to LA, worked his way into Altman's band of misfits, and then he was in the McCabe and Mrs. Miller first.
Yeah,
and then
definitely.
he played those songs to Altman around that time. Of course, they struck Robert Altman's ear significantly, and then Robert Altman was then pitched a script for a different kind of Western movie that was supposed to star Tom Jones that he didn't like, but he was captivated by the idea of a Nashville country music milieu, and commissioned Joan Tewksbury to put together the script based on her field work in Nashville. Then he was trying to get the film made, was having trouble financing it. And when he finally got the attention of producers Jerry Weintraub and Michael Starger, the thing that he did to win them over was he played those songs. "I'm Easy" and "It Don't Worry Me."
As a proof of concept that these actors could also portray musicians because they were musicians themselves first.
Yeah, I think
Or in addition to being actors. Yeah.
It may just have been that they were simply captivated by the songs.
Yeah.
It may just have been that.
We'll get to it a little bit later,
Yeah.
but I mean, I think
Grade
those are
A hits.
two of the strongest songs I think in the movie.
Absolutely.
for sure.
Excellent.
Yeah.
One little detail that I enjoyed in the film is that Keith Carradine's character, Tom, not only do you see him playing these songs, but there are two different scenes where you see him inside of his hotel bedroom listening
noodling?
to recordings of himself.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I think,
Didn't
is
catch
it
that.
both times that he's there with a woman?
Yes.
I think it's like once when he and Opal, it's the morning after. And then maybe with Mary morning after.
With
or-
Linnea.
Linnea,
Yeah.
Little
Linnea, yeah.
Tomlin,
So-
Yeah.
Yeah. I also like that move. It's not just that he's sitting there alone listening to himself, but he's like using it. Like they have just finished some sort of activity. So I think we can assume what was playing during that time. And that is insane.
Yeah.
In an interview that I heard Keith Carradine give, he talked about how he really did not like this guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really,
He's kind of a dirtbag.
grade A dirtbag, capital letters dirtbag.
Yeah.
But he said that he had a lot of trouble finding this character, and apparently he went to Robert Altman and consistently asked him if there was anything he could do to sort of soften some of what his character does. And Robert Altman was very dismissive of him. And it was just like, "You just keep doing what you're doing, keep doing what you're doing." And apparently he said after shooting had wrapped and he actually saw the film that he realized that the difficulty he had trying to pull this character out actually made this character seem like there was a lot of self-loathing within him.
Yeah.
And so he agreed that he needed to just keep doing
Yeah.
what he was doing.
Makes the character a little more sympathetic. I think.
Exactly. Yes.
I also think that his relationship with Linnea specifically humanizes him a little bit more, even though obviously he doesn't treat her really that much better than anybody else. The scene that really struck me on my second rewatch was when he is playing I'm Easy and there are like 4 women in the crowd.
I love that scene.
That think it's about them.
Yeah.
But I mean, we don't know that it's about Linnea necessarily. That seems to be the implication. And the other women slowly realize this. They like see him looking at her and they start to turn around like, what's he looking at?
Right,
And
right,
see
right,
her
right.
in the back.
Yeah,
And I think that does humanize him to a certain extent because he can, probably get any of these women, but he seems pretty intent on this one. You can definitely argue that his motivations are that, she's rebuffing him some and he maybe takes that not too well. Perhaps that's part of why he's pursuing her so much.
That's how I took it. I think he's just a grade A narcissist,
I totally
sociopath.
agree.
And I think it's supported a little bit by what happens after
Absolutely.
they consummate whatever happens later in the film. I think I was actually speechless at this scene.
Yeah.
How he ends up calling another woman before Linnea leaves with the expressed intention of setting up a booty call.
Absolutely.
I mean, come on.
But it's
Yeah.
interesting because he makes this phone call after he has asked Linnea to stay longer and she says no. So I think he's just like so fragile. Like
Absolutely.
he's his ego is so easily wounded.
Yeah.
Yeah, an unspeakably shitty human being.
Yeah.
And on the other side of that relationship, if you'll call it that, Linnea as a character, I read that Joan Tewksbury was putting some of her own marital strife into that character. So there was, there's another genuine voice speaking through there. But I have to say, her face during the I'm Easy scene is unforgettable.
Oh, I wrote
yeah.
it down as one of my favorite things about this movie.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that scene it's classic Robert Altman slow zoom. It's like the Mona Lisa.
Exactly.
You can project anything you want onto it, and there are a ton of different emotions that are happening. It's funny to me because her character and her husband, Delbert,
Yes.
Yeah.
maybe it's just because I'm a parent now, but the idea of that relationship that she has with her husband apparently being so fractured, or her own ego being so fragile as well, that she has to kind of step out on her family, although we see that Dell is capable of the same thing.
That's the thing.
Was like tough. I had a hard time watching that.
Yeah, it's really tough. I think their relationship in particular is a sad one and a difficult one to watch. She's an excellent mother. You know, if you look at, I think, her scene specifically with her children separately from her actions within her marriage, she seems like a really wonderful mom. And even when she's in bed with Tom, she's like, do you want to learn some sign language? Like, because she knows it because of her children.
Yes.
So,
I would agree with you there.
I mean, you were talking about how he also is not particularly faithful to her. And he actually... So at the same time, I believe that Lene is hooking up with Tom, Dell is at the campaign fundraiser where Sulene is forced to strip in front of a room full of men.
Right. Which sounds like, and he seems like he was maybe the one to organize it or rope her into it. Yes.
Exactly. And then he gives her a ride home and tries to come onto her at the door when she's clearly incredibly uncomfortable. And he starts, being very explicit in like what he wants to do to her and where he wants to touch her. And it's only then her friend Wade stepping in that allows her to kind of escape and pushes him away. So it's like, I mean, yeah, you're married to a guy that's capable of behavior like this. It's like, I understand why, this hunky, like, young musician who's interested in you comes to town and you're like, well, like, I'm married to a dirtbag and maybe I'll try this other dirtbag out. I don't know. It's tough.
I feel like both of them are just guilty of being pretty terrible, but I just feel so bad anytime there are kids in the middle of it.
Yeah.
And not only are there kids, there are kids that have special needs.
Yes.
These kids are hearing impaired.
Yeah, exactly.
And, well, another fun fact about the role of Linnea, do either of you know who the inspiration for that role was?
I think I read this somewhere,
No.
and it's late, and it's drawing a blank. Go for it.
This is a pretty juicy one. Louise Fletcher.
I did read that. Yes.
Yes, it was because she had worked on Robert Altman's previous film, Thieves Like Us.
Okay.
And yeah, she has a part in that movie. And that Louise Fletcher, in real life, she was a coda. She was a child of deaf adults.
Oh, didn't know that.
Yeah. And so her parents visited the set of Thieves Like Us, and then Robert Altman witnessed her translating. And as a result, he and Joan Tewksbury built up this character based on what they had observed in real life with Louise Fletcher. And I don't totally know why, but she wasn't cast in the part. It went to Lily Tomlin. I think, maybe there's a reason.
I mean, this is the same year as Cuckoo's Nest. She's busy.
And
my gosh, boy, what a confluence of things for Louise Fletcher.
To make
Does it get any better?
It does get any better.
Okay, good.
So because to make up for not giving Louise Fletcher the part, Robert Altman showed some footage of her in Thieves Like Us to Michael Douglas and Milos Forman, leading to her casting as Nurse Ratched.
Okay.
Very nice.
And then, she won the Oscar, so
there we go.
Who was laughing in the end?
Yes,
exactly.
Yeah.
That's really fascinating.
Yeah, there was an anecdote that I also read in Oscar Wars that I haven't looked it up, but I imagine you can probably find footage of this online, that when in her acceptance speech, Louise Fletcher signed for her parents, and that Robert Altman was seen in the crowd mocking her hand gestures.
Oh.
And I think, it was from a distance, so people couldn't really tell if it was meant how insincere it was, but it was interpreted as a pretty cruel mockery.
He gives with one hand and takes with the other. My gosh. Okay. Interesting.
Just because of the nature of publicity, I'm sure it was blown somewhat out of proportion, but that was, just a bit of an infamous moment that came from the reputation of both of these figures in response to the movies they were in 1975.
Wow.
So I have a question for you guys, which is, what is it about the life in Nashville and the life of a country music star that draws all of these people in? Does it have to do with the music? Is it the glamour? Is it the culture in Nashville and in this community? Is it some combination of these three? I'm so curious because I think that it varies from character to character. So I'm curious what you guys think about what is so tantalizing about this life and how it presents itself in some of the characters that we follow.
Well, Robert Altman is quoted in many places as having said that Nashville at that time in history was kind of like Hollywood many years prior, where it's, just this destination for people who want to make it in the industry that's promoted there or that has its roots there. And I mean, I feel like there are like everyone, okay, not everyone, but so many of the characters seek country music stardom, but for some of them, like say for Tom, there's something a little bit more egotistical, narcissistic about it. And for other characters, like maybe Suleen Gay, it's more sincere.
Yeah.
It's more out of just a sincere fascination for music. And I mean, I have to say, I may come back to this, but some of the characters who kind of stood out to me in this film were the people who don't get developed, the session players who you see in the background, because these are the people who not only are devoted to their music, it is simply their job.
Yeah.
And so people like, the Richard Baskin character, Frog, that I sort of felt for him when you see Haven Hamilton kick him out of the session early in the movie, but I also sort of understand watching him that like he'll find another thing to do.
Right.
Like he's not going to be affected by this.
I think also it's sort of intimated in that scene that Haven Hamilton, his attitude and what he's projecting in that is not a surprise to the people around him.
Right.
Yeah.
He wanted somebody else on that session, I think.
Yeah.
Right?
Pig. He wanted
Exactly.
pig on that session. I ask for pig.
Yeah.
You get me pig.
Right. Short words that end in G.
Animal names.
Those are the only
Describe
short names.
non-humans.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think what draws a lot of people to that city and the environment there, I think really just is rooted in this idea of fame and notoriety
Yeah.
and celebrity. And I think that as the movie progresses, you really see that everybody in this movie, all of the 20-some characters that we follow, I think have some connection to this idea of celebrity. Even I think some of the ones that are a little bit more kind of on the fringe.
Yeah.
That's the magnet that's drawn everybody into this, is
Yeah.
this idea, like you were saying, that there's something about Nashville that feels a little bit like old Hollywood.
Yeah.
And if you make it there, you can make it anywhere. And
Yeah.
I think that's a real big pull for pretty much everybody.
I totally agree. I mean, Julian, you started talking about Suleen Gay. I think that she's a really interesting character to talk about in regards to this, because she is, as you said, she is wanting to become a country music singer and a country music star. She is not at that level. And she clearly has romanticized this life quite a lot. One thing, though, that you said was that you thought that her love was for the music, and I think that's debatable.
Okay.
And my reasoning for that is that whenever we see her practicing, it is always in a mirror.
True.
Yep.
That's a good point.
And it seems like she is far more focused on her presentation and her dance moves. At one point, she's like shimmying in the mirror, and the note she's singing starts to waver because she's at that point lost breath support. And I mean, as they say in the film constantly, she's not a particularly good singer. She's not a well-trained singer at all. She says that she has written these songs, which I believe. I'd say they're some of the weaker songs in the film, intentionally so.
Yeah, I think
but they get the job done. We do see her singing in a church choir, so I appreciate that.
Right.
I do think she, like everybody else, does have a certain amount of love for music, but I wouldn't say that she has a more wholesome, like innocent goal than anybody else in this movie necessarily.
It's a fair point.
Yeah, I don't see many wholesome or innocent goals throughout actually the movie in general.
I mean, maybe if there's one character who perhaps leans a little more that way, it might be Winifred, the Barbara Harris character.
Yeah.
Who, I mean, she is coming to Nashville specifically seeking country music stardom and, getting a little bit into spoiler territory here, but she has the final word in the movie after this traumatizing event occurs at the final political rally. Haven Hamilton is, trying to clear things up and saying, "Someone just sing.
Someone sing.
Yeah.
Someone sing."
And it's Winifred, who has been on the margins this whole time, finally gets to take the mic.
Right.
And she commands the crowd, and it's great.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
the thing I also like about Winifred is when she is walking with, I believe, Kenny.
Yes.
When she's walking with Kenny down the highway after the pileup, he asks her, like, "Oh, if you don't make it, what are you going to do?" And she's like, "I guess I'll go into sales." Like, whereas when Suleen is asked or encouraged away from singing as a career. She's so intent on making it, which to a certain extent I do respect. But I do like Winifred's mindset of, I believe in myself. I'm going to give this a fair shot. And if it doesn't work out, I do have a backup plan.
Yeah. I have to admit that I did admire that in spite of all of the backlash that Julian gets, that, you know, she is able in certain scenes to just keep on doing the job of being on stage. For whatever caveats that has, I did have respect for the fact that she could, even if, you know, do it shakily, she could start and finish what she was doing.
Yeah. And somehow, even after this terrible experience of hers at the fundraiser, she still is not yet disillusioned by the industry. And maybe her mindset at that point is like, this can't all be for nothing. I did this. I'm going to get what they promised me. But after the event happens at the end, we do focus on a few different characters. Like we get shots of the reactions of a few different characters. And I think her reaction is very telling. She's very blank. And I think at that point is finally like, okay, maybe this isn't all it's cracked up to be.
And then alongside these characters who are actively trying to make it as performers, we get a few characters who are pretty specifically spectators. And the first one who comes to my mind is Private Glenn Kelly, the character played by Scott Glenn, who is, you know, in military uniform throughout the film, who we don't see perform at all, but he is clearly in love with Barbara Jean, played by Ronnie Blakely, and fawns over her, like, you know, literally in some moments.
It seems like his connection, though, is tied to something deeper than just like lust, right?
Yeah. He talks about how supposedly his mother is the one that like pulled her out of the fire where she was injured. Personally, I don't know how much truth there is to this because maybe I can get into this later. I'm skeptical of anything they're telling us about Barbara Jean and of everybody in general. We get a lot of different stories about what's been happening to Barbara Jean, and I don't know that I believe any of them.
She's got a lot of handlers. They seem like they're spinning plates to try to get her over the finish line.
Regardless, it seems like Private Glenn Kelly's mother is also a huge fan of Barbara Jean, and I think has passed this along to her son and told him directly that he needed to go see her. So I'm curious as to how much of it is, as you phrase, like he's in love with her, and how much of it is just like he's a huge fanboy.
Right. And it seems to be his only purpose that we see throughout the movie is just to watch her. We see him in the audience when she performs. We see him coming to her bedside when she is in a hospital. And then, you know, for some of the movie, I mean, if you don't know what's going to happen at the end, you think maybe, okay, well, like this guy has been in the military, you know, he can use weapons, maybe something dark. There's something dark going on here too.
Yeah. I do think they present him and Kenny in similar lights where we don't learn that much about either of them. Where they're both kind of always just, you know, in the background and occasionally in the foreground, have connections to multiple characters. And we're like kind of a little skeptical, I think, of each of them.
It's funny because I don't really feel skeptical with Kenny until he has that phone call.
The phone call with his mom.
The phone call with the mom, I think, does a lot. It does a lot to shift our opinions away from him as being even remotely trustworthy.
And I mean, he's an example of a certain character type that you see in other Altman movies. I don't know if either of you have seen movies like Shortcuts or Gosford Park. Without giving any specific spoilers, though, I mean, anytime Altman does an ensemble movie, there's always one character who you think is up to kind of nothing throughout the movie. And then in the last 5 minutes, there's like an oh shit moment with them.
Okay.
Yeah. And that character obviously is Kenny in Nashville, who you think is, you know, little more than just kind of an extra.
It's funny, though, the musician guys that he puts on, he uses it in order to plant himself just long enough, I guess, to concoct whatever scheme he has.
Yeah, but then on the other side still of this dichotomy of characters, some of these other musician characters are at the top of the food chain. There are stars in here too, like Barbara Jean or like Haven Hamilton.
And I think something that's so interesting is that the people at the top, they also want to keep rising. Like with Haven in particular, I think that he's a really interesting contrast to people like Julian or Winifred, who are at the bottom trying to make it. He's made it. But even he is trying to figure out how he can continue going up and, is interested in moving into politics, even though he seems not all that interested in politics, but he's interested in, I think, gaining more power and notoriety.
Yeah. Right.
Did you guys get that impression before Triplet? Yeah. Before he
I did
introduced
not.
that to him.
But
I didn't really either. And it seemed actually like he was kicking the can down the road.
Yeah.
And we never do get that answer from him.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I don't know. It is interesting, though. One of the things I thought was really fascinating about this film was that it does do this really fun, self-reflexive trick about fame. It plants two really well-known actors from the 70s into the movie, like just sort of inserts them
as cameos.
Right.
Elliot Gould and Julie Christie show up, both rather randomly. Apparently, they were just in town, maybe promoting films or whatnot.
But they're both with the same escort.
Exactly. It's a great way to access real life celebrity for the characters in Nashville, the movie, to interact with, and for their reactions in response to feel more relatable to a moviegoer.
Right.
And it is that reminder that there are tiers to fame.
Yeah.
And that famous people sometimes still want to be more famous, or they want to surround themselves with people that they perceive as being more famous. And that still seems to be driving a lot of their ambitions.
Right. And to that point, I mean, we haven't said too much about the character of Opal yet, but
my favorite character in this whole fucking movie, man.
It's interesting that you say that, because I had to think that if this movie were made later in time, do you know who I think I could have seen playing that part?
Oh man, I'm sure whoever you're going to say is going to be great.
Parker Posey.
Oh yes, totally.
Yeah, they have the same face.
Yeah, exactly. Similarly, the Dave Peel, who plays Bud Hamilton, Haven's son, reminded me a lot of Jesse Plemons.
Absolutely, Jesse Plemons.
I wrote that as a little thing. I was like, if no one says it, I'm going to say it.
Well, someone said it.
Someone said it.
But yeah, getting back to Opal, played by Geraldine Chaplin. I mean, she really, for better or worse, is the audience proxy of this movie. Mm-hmm. And I mean, you have to think about her in the house party scene when Elliot Gould shows up. That, I mean, everyone is, kind of gathering around him, meeting him, being introducing themselves. She's the one person who runs fanatically.
I also really love that moment. I'm so glad you brought that up, because I think I would have forgotten to talk about it. Mm-hmm. So before she notices Elliot Gould, she's speaking with Bud Hamilton, and she's asking him, did you have aspirations of being a musician? And Bud's kind of saying, no, my dad never would have allowed it, but I do write music. And he sings her a beautiful original song. Mm-hmm. And at first you kind of assume that she's listening intently. And then you see her eyes catch Elliot Gould, and she interrupts Bud and runs from him to go speak to Elliot Gould. It's heartbreaking. Bud is being so vulnerable with her.
And earnest.
Which is supposedly what she would want for her article, even though he's not the name, but that's what she's trying to get out of these musicians, is for them to open up to her.
Yeah.
And someone's actually doing that, and she's just on to the next most famous person in the room.
Mm-hmm. Did you guys catch that she says that she is a reporter for the BBC?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember what she says for the BBC? British Broadcasting Company.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
That's not what BBC stands
Corporation.
for. Exactly.
Yeah.
And this was also true in 1975?
I'm almost positive.
Okay, so. I trust you.
And
you think she's lying.
I love her character. I think she's lying. Great. I think she's full of shit. I think she's the most transferable character to today. Mm-hmm. The thing I find really funny about her too is, and her presence in this movie, is that I feel like in a lot of movies, the outsider or the foreigner, the visitor to a new land, as she claims she is often given some kind of wisdom or perspective that's meant to illuminate whatever might be happening.
Yeah.
It's the people who are in Nashville, who are from Nashville, are too close to all of this to really, have some greater perspective. that is so far from the case in
Absolutely.
this movie.
Right.
She's the most out of touch person in this whole movie. She's the most ignorant, which is, again, a huge irony because she claims she's a reporter.
Yeah, there's a really quick line that I didn't catch on my first rewatch, but caught the second time, where it's the same club where you hear "I'm Easy."
Yeah,
she's talking to Norman, who's like the chauffeur.
I love this line.
Yeah,
It's the
because
best.
he's telling her like, oh, like we should, like, I can give you some dirt, and she says, I make a point never to gossip with servants.
I love it. It's so great. I honestly, she's amazing.
Yeah.
This whole movie could just be her, and I would just have a crack up.
Yeah, and then like bringing it back a little bit more to the musical presence in this film. I mean, I like it that, in spite of all of the different levels of ego and desire for all the characters, that anytime you see someone performing, it's totally uninterrupted.
Yeah.
Totally. Yes.
And it's part of what gives it credibility as this slice of life experience. Because, for us, even when we're watching live performances, it's like sometimes you're totally captivated. Sometimes your mind's kind of elsewhere, but you're there the whole way through.
Right.
And whether it's the I'm Easy scene or anything else like it, I mean, I feel like this movie does such a great job of capturing that.
Yeah, and all of these are all recorded live, right? I don't
Yeah.
think any of them are in studio, and I think that is so interesting. It's such a cool choice in this movie that, as you said, does have musicians, but it's mostly musicians who I think would consider themselves actors first and
Right.
musicians second.
Yeah.
And I think that there are plenty of people that fall into this category in our modern day that would not necessarily be performing live
Right.
in filming the way that these actors
I think
do.
so too.
It's interesting.
Yeah. If you have followed our podcast before, you'll know that we have something called the Guitar Playing Accuracy Index. I will just go and say that this movie, I lost count
It's
of
like A+ across the board.
A+
Yeah.
across the board. Every time I was watching people's hands, it seemed to completely check out. And maybe we'll get more specific about some of these things at a later time. But yes, I think this is supplanted the guy from Fame.
I don't know if it's supplanted. It's just on the same tier.
I would
He is-
say I would go though a step further because I
Because
think
it's a full movie.
you can tell it's been overdubbed.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
like
Yes.
he's probably playing it in filming.
Yes,
But that's not the audio that they use.
exactly.
And it's worth saying, too, that Nashville has this really innovative form of multi-track sound design where they were able to do it documentary style and record everyone in multiple locations in just one scene. Just as well, I mean, I have to say my favorite scene of guitar playing accuracy in Nashville comes during a scene with Keith Carradine, Tom, in his bedroom. It's before I'm Easy because he's rehearsing it in his room. And what I really like about it is that you see him even in just noodling around, 100% accurate.
Yeah.
I was hoping you were going to bring up Norman's run on the
I
guitar.
was.
So
I was
sorry.
gonna
That Norman gets
Yeah.
a chance to play too.
That he shows up in that same scene, and he's just this side character most of the time, but for just a moment there you see he can play.
Which I think
banks out some minor 11 chords.
Yeah.
that is such a Nashville thing, like
Yep.
Nashville, the town. I think you see this in like New Orleans as well, where it's like even the chauffeur is also a hidden musician.
Yeah.
Right. I kind of gave it away a little bit, sort of answering your question, Madeline. I was curious for you guys because in a way that reminded me a little bit of some other films that we've talked about, like Safe and Mother. I feel like this movie is a real Rorschach test because it presents you with so many characters and so many little strands and things to take in. What, if anything, is this movie about to you guys? It can be very personal, but I'm curious.
Yeah, I mean, it's so tough because this movie is about many things. It has many themes. I can't say that I watched this and there's like one thing that sticks out to me above others, but one thing that did strike me this time is, so we keep kind of referring to this event at the end, which I think we need to actually spoil and
Yeah, let's do
define.
it.
So turn off now if you haven't watched it. But we talked a little bit about Kenny. So Kenny is lurking through a lot of this film. He's carrying around a violin case. And at the big political rally, while Barbara Jean is performing, he unlocks it, and it turns out there's not a violin inside, there is a gun. And he assassinates Barbara Jean on stage. And I believe she is presumed dead based on them carting off her body. One of the things that really always strikes me is how quick the crowd moves on from this. It's like there's chaos for a moment. Haven has his pleas of someone sing, and
it's Nashville.
Yeah,
we're stronger than this, or whatever.
This isn't Dallas. This is Nashville.
Right.
Yeah.
Which took me a second, and I was like, "Oh, JFK. Wow, that's rough."
Yeah.
I'm sure that his buddy, Lady Pearl, probably, took issue with
I was going to
his
say, the
particular
specter that
phrasing.
hangs over for her, too, in that movie. Yeah.
So he hands the mic to Winifred, who we haven't heard sing up to this point, and she starts belting out "It Don't Worry Me" with backup from the gospel choir over time. And some of our characters are clearly stricken by what they've witnessed. I talked a little bit about Sue Lean earlier, and how it kind of lingers on her for a bit. Also, Triplet, I think, is kind of like, Jesus, damn it.
Yeah,
Exactly. He was like, I've put so much
work into this.
There's no way to account for an assassination.
Yeah.
But slowly, those characters start to move away, or we start to focus on them less.
Yeah.
And we start to focus more on Winifred's performance, which the lyrics themselves obviously are very telling. But we also start to focus a lot on the audience, the crowd. And we start to focus on families and children in particular that are in this crowd and are at a certain point just start singing along and seem to kind of get to a point where they've already moved past the horrible tragedy that they've seen. And I think that the fact that the film ends with this is incredibly telling about what Altman is at least partially trying to say, that we do have a tendency to turn the other cheek when it comes to tragedy because we're focusing so much on our own lives. All of these characters are so selfish.
Yes.
Everyone is so selfish in this film. Barely anybody is ever looking out for another person. I think that that's really underlined in this final scene. I find this quote from the commentary very telling. So Robert Altman says, "When John Lennon was assassinated, I got a call immediately from the Washington Post. And they said, 'Do you feel responsible for this?' And I said, 'What do you mean responsible?' They say, 'Well, I mean, you're the one that predicted there would be a political assassination of a star.' And I said, 'Well, I don't feel responsible.' But I said, 'But don't you feel responsible for not heeding my warning?' So to me, to a certain extent, I don't think it's the entire theme of the film, but I think that this is a warning that our obsession with celebrity is unhealthy and that violence is so ingrained in our society that it has to come to a head. And I have a list of all of the allusions to violence that I caught throughout the film. And a couple of quick ones is Opal talking to Triplet at some point, I think before the fundraiser, about people being pushed to violence, which then immediately cuts to the shot of Kenny on the phone.
Yeah.
Then even, I believe it's in one of her songs at the end, Barbara Jean has a lyric, "When I feel my life vanishing, like waves upon the sand."
And also earlier in the movie, when Barbara Jean arrives at the airport, when Barbara Jean is talking to Barnett about all the security present at the airport, and he just says it's something about all the hijackers. So that's another allusion to violence that's quite early in the film.
When Private Kelly is sneaking into Barbara Jean's hospital room, I believe the people working at the hospital, the nurses, are also talking about violence of some sort. I wrote that down, although I didn't write the exact quote. And then we see a fight earlier. Like we see, I think it's Wade and Kenny get into a fight at one of the bluegrass clubs. So there is a lot of violence that's just like kind of constantly under the surface here.
Even that fight too, it's brushed off pretty quickly as the performances continue in that scene.
I love what you said. I was not familiar with that particular anecdote from Robert Altman. One of the things that was a big through line, and Julian, when you were setting up this movie, you mentioned it, was the presence of a kind of rogue politician who is having a big moment right now.
Yeah.
Hal Philip Walker. Thank you.
Yeah.
So many names in this film.
It was based on a real person who
Exactly.
Robert Altman knew named Thomas Hal Phillips.
Yes, and apparently I heard that all those monologues
Are voiced by Thomas Hal
were
Phillips.
written by himself, and they were essentially the result of Robert Altman saying, if you could say exactly what's on your mind, or if you could ask for exactly what you would want as a politician, what would you say? To me, I thought it was really interesting that this movie had politics just as this through line, something that you just could not escape. At some point, politicians are in bed with celebrities and celebrities are in bed with politicians, and that everyone just kind of knows that they're in a popularity contest.
Yeah.
And that while there may be illusions from both sides about wanting to do better for the greater good, or that there is some sort of art that undergirds their ambitions, it's really just about people having the most notoriety that they can.
Yeah.
What, 4 or 5 years after this movie was released, we get a Hollywood actor, Ronald Reagan, to be sworn in as president. And that was
Also
a huge...
with an attempted assassination inspired by a film.
Exactly. That was a watershed moment for politics. And it seems like something that this movie, it really has in mind, you know, that, that inevitably we're going to hit a moment where these two things are going to collide.
Right.
We're speaking in 2024. I think we can look back 8 years ago and we can say that there was another rather prominent example of something like this happening. Yeah.
Appropriately, that was the first year that I saw this movie.
Yeah.
In 2016. And then, I mean, that was making me think of a quote that comes from that Hal Philip Walker truck early in the movie, which is, all of us are deeply involved in politics, whether we know it or not, and whether we like it or not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
I think
love
you
that
see
line.
a lot of that in the Nashville community. There is a lot of drama and like infighting. We have Barbara Jean, but Barbara Jean is not the only Nashville superstar lady, because we also have
Connie White.
Connie White,
Yeah.
played by Karen Black, and they're rivals here, but we don't ever see them interact. That's kind of mentioned, I think, by Haven at one point, that they
Right.
never appear together.
That's a touchy subject for Barbara Jean and her husband.
Yeah.
Yeah, eventually.
I just picked up on the last name pun of Karen Black playing Connie White.
There we go.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
funny.
Yeah. I mean, knowing Altman's sense of humor, that was probably intentional.
Probably.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just think there is this drama. There are these politics, a different kind of politics, but there are these politics within this community itself.
Yeah.
So it's not that far of a jump up to a wider political spectrum.
Right. And I think, too, there's a few characters throughout the movie who, when asked about politics, refrain from taking a clear stance. I know that Tom does it in an earlier scene in the film. I think he's asked a question by a fan in the airport scene. And then initially, when John Triplett is broaching the subject to Haven Hamilton, he is resistant to take any political sides as well. But I think part of what the film is saying with this seeming juxtaposition of music and politics is that music is political. That, just by anything that can be so prominent is going to influence people's opinions, whether they like it or not.
Right. Yeah, it's a good way of putting it.
Yeah. We don't know this directly from Barbara Jean, but her husband is very resistant to having her perform at the rally. And I think for similar reasons that Haven and Lady Pearl have mentioned, it seems like, they allude to, I think, not wanting to alienate anybody from a different political background or different political viewpoints than themselves, because they need to be liked. That is part of your job as a musician when you're at that level of fame, is that you need to be adored to a certain extent.
Right.
And they know that getting involved in politics, that is going to lose them a certain amount of fans.
Yeah, this is a bit of an anecdote, but every time I think about that, I always think about Michael Jordan and how he famously was extremely apolitical, and he always fell back on that line, Republicans wear
Nike
shoes too. Yeah. It's not necessarily my job or anybody's job to tell anybody how to live or think, but we can certainly have opinions when we hear things like that and go like, oh man, you kind of wish that people can stand for more than just money.
Particularly when you get to a certain amount of influence.
Right. Right.
I think that Bill, Tom, and Mary are interesting in this because Bill and Mary are approached by Triplet to perform at the rally. And Bill seems kind of open to it. Like, he is one that, as you said, Julian, he's very apolitical. They are registered Democrats, but he says it's because her father is a registered Democrat.
It's great.
He seems to not have particular strong affiliations one way or the other. He, I think, just wants them to be successful as musicians and will pretty much take any high profile gig that he's offered. She is more resistant to this, but it seems like part of it is less to do with her affiliation as a Democrat and more to do with her infatuation with Tom, who she says would not do it.
Right. And also it seems like there's some personal strife going on between them.
I have to say, too, one little detail that you see in that scene that comes up a little earlier in the movie. Got to shout out that turtle ottoman that they have up there.
Right?
Actually,
what was that?
Interesting point is my grandparents have one of those, a turtle ottoman. It doesn't look identical to the one in the movie, but they have at their place. I've known it my whole life, a little turtle ottoman. And as soon as I saw that in the movie, it's like, oh yeah, like I've put my legs on that before.
I love that. And as I mentioned when we recorded our close up on John Cazale, my parents have one of those like chalices that they use in that film. So I feel like we just need to like have a collection of the movie related items that we or people we know own.
Yeah, that's another index for us.
I think so.
Yeah,
that's great.
What was interesting too to me is that I thought like the Hal Philip Walker platform, that even though, it's kind of this third party, seems left leaning viewpoint that he has, I mean, it really is in the background for a lot of the movie, even, for the seeming importance of what he's talking about. It really is it's literally background noise.
But can I list a few points from his platform that I wrote down?
Do it.
1, abolishing the Electoral College. 2, changing the national anthem. 3, eliminating subsidies for farmers.
Okay.
And 4, removing lawyers from government, especially from Congress.
I kind of like that one.
And some of these points, particularly things like abolishing the Electoral College, are still relevant today.
Yeah, the fact that this is a film that came out nearly 50 years ago, and we're still very much having that conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah. You hear it in the opening Haven Hamilton scene that this is a movie that is acknowledging the American bicentennial.
Yeah.
But
it's 1 year before it. The movie comes out in 75. The bicentennial is 1976.
We must be doing something right to last 200 years.
Yeah. And I think the first time I watched that movie, seeing that scene, I didn't really know who Henry Gibson was, and I didn't really pick up on the irony of, this comic actor playing that kind of character.
Yeah.
Sure.
And I mean, I think he's playing him sincerely, but I do feel like there is kind of an irony there too.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Both legitimately playing a country singer, but kind of playing into stereotypes as well.
I really, really enjoy his musical performances in this for the exact point that you make. They're kind of tongue in cheek.
Yeah.
I think for this song that you're talking about now, but also when he's performing at the Opry, I really like For the Sake of the Children.
I like that one too.
Is so funny.
Yeah, he's hilarious. That song in general too. It lands and you're like, oh my goodness. Okay, we're there. We're doing it.
And he just 100% sells it.
Yeah.
It's both earnest from the character, but again, tongue in cheek from the actor. And I think that's such a delicate balance that he 100% nails.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did anybody notice how many shots during that performance were from
the back? I think so.
Yeah.
We can really appreciate the shirt.
I mean, he does have a pretty snazzy outfit. It's very like sequenced out.
Yeah, which apparently, according to Wikipedia, this is called a nudie suit.
Okay. Just for its tight, form-fitting design?
I think that it was because a tailor named Nudie Cone popularized this kind of very like sequined, bedazzled kind of suit design.
Okay. So it has nothing to do with
like being nude.
Got it. Okay.
Since we've brought up that Grand Ole Opry scene too, I wanted to take a moment to recognize the character Tommy Brown as well.
Yeah,
who
absolutely.
really gets his moment of performance there too. And I think the only other major moment you get with him is when he is pretty egregiously insulted
Right.
by another audience member in an earlier performance in the movie. That scene, though, as uncomfortable as it is to watch, I mean, there is a proof of the film's awareness of racial politics in there too. And that, it's a mostly white cast, but then you get Tommy Brown, who is this one African-American country singer too.
Right.
And, this is a type of presence that has historically been marginalized. But, in recent years, thanks to people like Lil Nas X, we see that this kind of figure is someone who is more ingrained in that type of culture than has often been publicized.
Darius Rucker too. Shout out to
of
him.
course.
Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely.
Yeah, I love that point. I want to go back really quickly to that Grand Ole Opry performance as well, specifically, because you had said earlier about how this movie has so many uninterrupted musical performances.
Yes.
It feels very much like it's doing service to the listener.
Yeah.
But I also felt like there was this wonderful balance of the performances also feeling very workmanlike.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That you really are feeling the music business side
totally.
of this.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I think another example of the kind of workman-like quality is in Barbara Jean's first performance, not at the rally, but the it's like a different...
Oh, the one that
Yeah.
where she kind of
where
starts
she,
to lose
yeah,
it.
she goes off
Yeah.
the rails a little bit.
Yeah.
Because when they're leading her onto the stage, she's like talking about how she feels a little rushed.
Right.
And
right.
I think that is, she is here to do a job.
Yeah. I also
Yeah.
love that scene too, because that's one where you see all the backing musicians. They lead her in and then they kind of
Yeah.
trail off when they realize that she's not really performing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's the closest that those musicians get to actually acting.
Yeah.
Which I felt like,
Yeah.
deserves a shout out.
But yeah, that's when I was thinking of the workmanlike nature of the musicians too, because in that scene, they're playing some amazing things there.
Yeah.
Dude,
Yeah, like-
there's a couple guys playing some hot licks
That,
all
that
over
pedal
this.
steel guy.
Oh,
Yeah.
killing.
The drummer
Killing.
too, I thought, in that band. I mean, that was a detail that I noted from my very first viewing years and years ago, which was just, for all of the different threads of the movie that I was trying and struggling to put together in that first viewing, that was one thing where I was like, this song is a bop.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lot of
There's some
bops.
really good ones.
Yeah, and in spite of all of the things that you learn about the characters, I mean, part of how this movie lives in my mind is simply just as like a great musical experience.
Absolutely.
Like, for the soundtrack alone, like I've listened to that soundtrack just as kind of like comfort music sometimes. I was talking about character details. In spite of everything you learn about Tom as a character, you can't deny I'm Easy is such a captivating
I
song.
mean, It
Absolutely.
Don't Worry Me Too is another.
Exactly.
Like, to use
It
your
Don't Worry Me,
description,
I
bop.
love because it's a fairly simplistic melody. It's only one stanza that's just repeated. And then when Winifred does it, she's also modulating it.
Right.
I think that speaks so highly to how well crafted this song is.
Yeah,
That
definitely.
you only really need like a 12-second stanza to blow people's minds.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
and that song occurs like 4 or 5 times throughout the movie in
Yeah.
different forms. I mean,
Right.
there's a version of it, I think, that plays in the opening credits.
Yep.
You hear Tom playing it on a tape in his
Yeah.
bedroom.
Yeah.
I think there's a scene where you hear the church choir singing it too.
Mm-hmm.
Almost on the level of the Hal Philip Walker truck. I mean, that song is a through
Yeah.
line of the movie as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely.
And I mean, when you consider it in context of this final scene where this scary thing happens, but then the crowd just kind of gets distracted by the performance, the line, "You may say that I ain't free, but it don't worry me," really fits.
Absolutely.
yeah, I
And
think there's some political undertones to that too,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah, and I was, a little harsh on this crowd earlier, but I do, to a certain extent, understand, like, hearing Barbara Harris belt this out, like, suddenly the rest of the world just melts away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. She really takes that moment and seizes
Yeah.
it. It's pretty
Exactly.
remarkable.
Yeah, and well, I think you kind of edged on this earlier, Emilio, but I also, in talking about how this movie does service to the listener, I love the editing in a bunch of scenes where, like, during that Grand Ole Opry sequence, I mean, it technically is uninterrupted, but you do get these cuts back and forth from the performance itself to Barbara Jean and
Right
Barnett
backstage,
listening
yeah.
to it on the radio.
Oh, that too. Yes.
in,
yes.
in the
yes.
hospital.
Yeah.
You also get, I mean, there's a scene where an ad plays and you hear it on Suleen Gay's radio as well.
Goo Goo bars or whatever.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And for a movie that spends so much time in its scenes, like in an uninterrupted way. I think it makes some very smart cuts in that regard too.
For sure,
Yeah,
for sure.
totally.
Yeah, I mean, I think technically this movie is a real marvel. Like, I don't know how, in God's name, we are able to have such rich depictions of so many people, and that a lot of them come together by the end. It's a real achievement.
Yeah. A view that I've held consistently about Robert Altman for all the movies of his I've seen like 9 or 10 at this point. And Nashville was only the second film of his that I saw after McCabe and Mrs. Miller. And I just remember thinking, after seeing those two to start out, I was new to Altman. So I kind of felt like, Emilio, you described about watching Punch Drunk Love years ago. Like, I'm not totally sure what I watched, but in a way where I'm into it.
Yeah, totally.
And even after I have gotten to know Altman, seeing a bunch of his movies, I can still watch a new one and feel the same way.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I totally agree. Yeah. This having been the first time I've seen this movie in almost 20 years, I, in some ways, watched it and have taken away a totally different movie from it.
Yeah.
Are there any smaller details that we want to start pointing out? Because this movie is, as we've described, so full of little details. But
I wanted to talk a little bit more about the music because we talked about a few songs that were just like absolute bops. But I think I'm sure there are more that we want to give shout outs to. And for me, I really like Since You've Gone, which is the one that Bill, Tom, and Mary perform together right before he does I'm Easy. I really like that one. Do you guys know who wrote that?
Who did?
No.
Gary Busey.
Because Gary Busey was supposed to be the Keith Carradine character.
I saw it in the cat. I saw it as the credits were rolling, and I was like, that Gary Busey?
Wow. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's a great song. I think it's very well performed, not just musically, but particularly by the actress who plays Mary, whose name is not in front of me. She has so much passion and like anger because at this point she is hooked up with Tom, cheated on her husband,
right,
and knows that he is not here to commit to her. And Tom even says right before they go on stage, like, "Oh, I used to be part of a trio," which may or may not be a joke. I think they're not fully sure.
I would agree with you. It's a little up for debate.
So I think that it really comes through in the performances from the three of them. All right, Julian, what is this actress's name?
Christina Rains.
Thank you.
And I kept thinking, we talked a little bit about lookalikes earlier, and this one may be slightly more of a stretch, but looking at her face, I kept thinking of Danielle Haim.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll take it.
Some similar features.
Another musician.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
You could say she's something of an actress in Licorice Pizza.
Well, I mean, and Paul Thomas Anderson, greatly influenced by Robert Altman.
There you go.
I was really into that song as well. And I mean, just in talking about, I don't think they're little details, but just in details of the film, other songs that we enjoyed that we haven't mentioned yet.
Rolling Stone.
Oh, yes. Yeah, the Karen Black song.
Really, really good. Yeah, I mean, I know that is an image that it's well-trodden territory, but killer performance, man. Across the board.
Yeah. I also like, too, how there's one scene where you see Suleen Gay performing, and she performs a Barbara Jean song that you haven't heard yet in the film, but then it plays a few scenes later.
And it's nearly unrecognizable because I'm sorry to Suleen, but she is not giving a particularly good performance. And so then when Barbara Jean, and I think with Haven, they perform it together later. And it's like, that's what it's supposed to sound like.
Yeah.
And while we're talking about Suleen, one small detail that I liked in the scene where she's performing at the fundraiser, in the second or the last song she does, I forget how many she does, the accompanist leads her in, and then she starts at a completely different tempo.
Yeah.
And he has to adjust to her.
I remember catching that too.
I just really like that moment.
Yeah. Which also could play, I think, well into her character, because I think by that point she realizes that she's not there to be appreciated, but for the things that she wants to be appreciated for.
She's shaken up, and she's also, I think, not the most solid musician.
Right. So maybe it would have happened anyway, even if she was in a good state of mind.
Yeah. Well, just to go on with other little details that I noticed, I have a few I want to shout out. So similarly to how Licorice Pizza Records appears serendipitously in Fast Times at Ridgemont High, I happened to notice there was, I think, a bench sign as all the characters are leaving the airport early in the movie for a Wilco truck rental.
Oh, I saw that too. It's very brief, but I
Yeah.
caught it. Absolutely.
And Wilco is a very tried and true phrase just in the general lexicon, but I mean, that's a musical reference,
that is it.
undeniably.
It became one for sure.
Going back to talking about songs we enjoyed, I mean, we've talked a lot about Barbara Jean, but we haven't mentioned, other than One I Love You, any of her songs by name, and they're all bops too.
Yeah.
And Ronnie Blakely, I mean, she was a working musician at that time. And I mean, the story of her casting is somewhat serendipitous too.
Definitely.
That like she was the last person to be cast in the film. I can't remember who they had originally intended to play the part, but they were having trouble filling the role, and she was in Nashville at the right time, and she was willing to participate. And I think the first time I saw images of the movie, I assumed that she was Shelley Duvall.
They have similar features.
They kind of
They
do.
do.
Yeah.
While we're talking about Shelley Duvall,
Yeah.
she has such great looks
She does.
in this film. And Dougie said she would dominate New York City. And I 100% agree. Like, I
Yeah.
think, every single time we see her, she's got a different, amazing outfit on, often multiple in the same day, different wigs. Like, she's just, I love her costume.
She needs to be NYC Joan.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And just a few more little details. So early in the movie, you see there is a bartender or club owner who is watching Julian Gay and calls up Del Reese to put in a good word for her.
Right.
That character's name is Trout, and the actor's name is Merle Kilgore. And does the name Kilgore Trout mean anything to anyone else here?
No.
No?
That is the stand-in character for Kurt Vonnegut in a lot of his books.
Ah,
Kilgore Trout.
Oh.
interesting.
Yeah.
Nice
Okay.
catch.
I'm there.
And I don't know if that was intentional, but I had to note that
totally.
combination of names, and to mention too that in reading through Oscar Wars, there's a little paragraph about Pauline Kael's first experience of watching the movie, which would lead to her praising it, and apparently Kurt Vonnegut was present for that.
There we go.
All right.
Yeah.
So I would love to shout out the accuracy of a montage that I really like, which is the like kind of Sunday morning montage of all the church scenes. And the reason why I think this is a very important and accurate inclusion is because as someone who grew up in the South and who spent my early adulthood also still in the South, that is where the gigs are. That is, I mean, every musician I knew had church gigs, like, because that's just primarily a lot of people are able to have that as like a steady source of income.
Oh yeah, it's the case here too in New York City.
It's the case in a lot of places, but I would argue more so in the South than up here.
Right.
Just with like the thing I like about the montage is that you see different characters at different churches, and the churches are also distinct. And it's not just like here's the black church and here's like a Catholic church. You get both of those, but you also get what I would assume to be more of like a Methodist church and then more of like a Southern Baptist church. And these are all slightly different. And they all felt, as someone who's been in all of these, extremely accurate.
Wow, cool.
Yeah.
Good to know. Thanks for weighing in.
I like how in that montage too that you see characters like Haven Hamilton and Julian Gay placed on the same level as they're singing in the choir. And you know,
That's right.
in
Yeah.
spite of their varied levels of prominence, that that's one scene where, apart from the narrative placing them together, they are equal.
Yep.
One last little detail that I have to shout out, which is a possible segue into Unlikely Shared Universe. There's one very notable character we have not mentioned yet.
He was one that I was going to mention, but go
Yes,
for it.
which
Okay.
is this man riding a tricycle throughout the film.
It's
A
not really a
motorized
tricycle. Though. It's like
tricycle.
it's a motorcycle that has like that super long, elongated front
wheel, yeah.
Right.
It has got to be like the furthest front wheel ever placed on a vehicle, like in automotive history. Like I've never. It's literally in a different zip code than the rest of the
and
vehicle.
Lene says they are just so dangerous.
Yeah, they are.
And,
Yeah.
and she also mentions that ever since Easy Rider, people have been riding those.
I caught that reference.
But
That's a
they
good one.
look so cool, so I get it.
Yeah.
Yeah. This character is billed as Tricycle Man. But so there's one little detail with that character is there's a scene where he is driving L.A. Joan to the hospital to meet with her uncle in the nighttime and drops her off there, and then he drives off to the right on the screen. And then the next shot is in the daylight, and he's still driving in the same direction.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
Pretty
as if he
nice.
never stopped.
I gotta say, there's something so funny about that. The Easy Rider reference really got me because there's something kind of like rough and raw about the depiction of Peter Fonda in that movie.
Yeah.
And there's just something so funny about a super caricatured version of that with two wheels in the back. So it's like this almost like emasculated version of that imagery. I just find it very, very funny.
And he's a magician.
Exactly. Yeah.
Amateur.
I don't know. Kind
a
of
good
a good
musician.
One. Yeah.
What?
Oh, I thought you said musician for a second.
He is a musician. Jeff Goldblum is.
Well, Jeff Goldblum is.
He's a magician.
Yeah. I think part of what contributed to me saying amateur there is, if I remember correctly, I think in the Robert Altman commentary on the DVD, there's a moment when he does that salt magic trick at the diner where he's saying that like Jeff Goldblum had taken some magic lessons, but it's like he wasn't that good at it.
Yeah. It could have fooled me. I thought it was quite fun. It was a nice touch.
Maybe Altman has a more refined eye for like, magic than I do. I don't know. I mean, I feel like I don't know what to look for. So I see him do those tricks and I was like, wow.
I think I'm the same way.
Yeah.
I was just, his words were rubbing off on me.
I have one more quick small detail or possibly two. One thing that I liked is that when they are at the Grand Ole Opry, Barbara Jean was supposed to perform and I keep doing this.
Connie White?
Connie White.
There's so many names in this movie.
So
It's
many
okay.
names.
You are forgiven.
Connie White is her replacement, and Scott Glenn, as Private Glenn Kelly, gets up and leaves.
That's
I
right.
noticed
That's
that.
right.
I really like that moment because that is his entire focus here in Nashville. He wants to be where Barbara Jean is.
Right.
And if
Right.
Barbara Jean is not playing at the Opry, he is out.
Yeah.
That's very true.
And the only other one that I have is the after party after that where they're at the club and they're announcing like, oh, there's a celebrity in the audience. They're referring to Connie White. Haven starts to get up
I caught that too. That's so good.
from his chair. Oh, Haven.
Yeah.
He can't handle being kind of second here. And I think that is where he decides to perform at the rally.
In that moment,
Yeah.
his ego's hurt just enough. He's got to make it up.
Yeah, because at that point, it's Triplet asks him like, "Oh, do you think we could get Connie White?" And that's when that's when Haven tells Triplet like, "Well, Barbara Jean and Connie White never performed together, but Haven Hamilton will go wherever Barbara Jean is." So I think he has taken sides here.
Again, music and politics converging.
Yeah.
I got a couple little things that I really liked. I've already talked at length about how I felt Opal was just the heart and soul of the humor in this movie.
Yep.
She's speaking to somebody, and I can't remember who it was, but she says, "I know the problems in the South. I've heard of them." Yeah. And it just, again, speaking to the incredible amount of ignorance that she has.
I believe she says that to Tommy Brown.
Yeah.
Oh,
Which I think makes
there
it...
you go. Makes it
Yeah.
even worse.
Yeah, I mean, just underscores the ignorance of her character to so many more degrees.
Right.
Because she also, I think, doesn't know who exactly Tommy Brown is. She's speaking to him and not realizing.
And then doesn't she have this moment where she hears or she's introduced to his wife?
Yeah.
And she has this moment where she's like...
It's like panic.
Yeah, it's
And
panic.
confusion.
Exactly. And also she cannot hide the surprise on her face.
Yeah.
Incredible. Also, did not know this until I was looking this up, but Geraldine Chaplin, daughter of Charlie Chaplin.
Chaplin's daughter.
Yeah. Two other quick things I'll say. I could not help but hear Edith Massey when I heard Lady Pearl speak.
Yeah.
I was literally waiting for her to start shrieking for eggs. And I did find it kind of funny because there is one scene where she does start speaking quite a bit, I think, with somebody, and it directly follows that scene where I think Dell and Lene are talking about frying or hard-boiling eggs.
Yeah. Yeah.
Couldn't help but think of Edith Massey. And then I think the last thing that I just wanted to mention, a movie that this really reminded me of in many ways, another movie that came out in 1975, is Shampoo. I think they're both movies that look at politics, at least through the eyes of the characters, as more of a nuisance or some kind of intrusion on their lives, and that it kind of becomes this like nagging reminder that at some point, as citizens of this country, we have to consider life outside of ourselves. So just another little shout out to another film from 1975, not a Best Picture nominee, but a movie that made a lot of money in 1975, shampoo.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, I think, are we ready for Unlikely Shared Universe?
I believe so.
yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, if no one else wants to kick it off, I can do that.
Do it.
All right. So this tricycle man, we never learn his name. And I'll save that detail for a little bit later. But let's say that even though this man is totally silent in this film, maybe he's only a spectator, as we see, but maybe he has some musical ambitions of his own. And this stop in Nashville is part of a cross-country journey for him. Maybe he grew up in California and he's trying to make his way to New York in search of performing in front of a producer named John Hammond. And, maybe he makes it to him, or maybe not, but whatever the case, he finds that music is not quite his bag. He's not really into it because this interest, while he does sincerely enjoy music and keeps it as a side passion, this interest is supplanted with mathematics and chaos theory.
Yes.
Perhaps he enrolls in a graduate program and studies this sort of material, earns his doctorate. Years and years down the line, he's a published author. He's a known scholar on this material, and he is sought out by a different John Hammond to survey his new park on a Caribbean island in which he claims to have resurrected dinosaurs from fossils in amber. And so, this tricycle man, I guess I can say his name now, is Ian Malcolm. And Dr. Malcolm realizes that he was unsure of his passions when he was much younger, but inevitably the life that he wanted found a way.
There we go.
Yeah.
I got to say one connection between Tricycle Man and Ian Malcolm. They both seem to love the ladies.
They do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, well, as if it isn't apparent enough already, this is Dr. Malcolm from Jurassic Park.
Absolutely.
Jurassic Park 2.
And Lost World.
Yes, which is like a flawed movie, but with some merits. It's an
Yeah.
interesting viewing experience.
Interesting Vince Vaughn performance.
Yeah.
Pete Postlethwaite's actually kind of good in that too.
Yeah.
There's a really great deleted scene with Pete Postlethwaite from Lost
I
World.
have to say, too, now that you've mentioned Pete Postlethwaite and Vince Vaughn, that their characters, they're named as enemies, and they are named after
Yes.
two characters from the Warren Zevon song, Roland the Headless Thompson Gunner.
and you being a big Warren Zevon fan?
Yes,
Yes.
I have to know that.
Nice.
Yeah, so Roland is the Pete Postlethwaite character, and Van Owen, who is the man who deprives Roland the Headless Thompson Gunner of his head.
Right.
Van Owen is the Vince Vaughn character.
Wow. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
I'd love to go next. So we talked a little bit about Private Glenn Kelly. And we don't know too much about Glenn other than he is a private in the Army, and his mother may or may not have rescued Barbara Jean from a fire.
Yep.
But I think based on the time period, we can safely assume that he served in Vietnam. And I propose that he was a member of the 173rd Airborne Battalion. And after the war, Glenn comes here to Nashville to fulfill his mother's wish of visiting Barbara Jean, which he does repeatedly. But after witnessing her assassination, that's got to be tough. So he falls into very deep despair, and his life goes a little bit off the rails. He changes his name to Kevin Garvey, and he starts to meet, plenty of women in his life and ends up fathering a son who he also names Kevin. So Kevin Garvey Jr. But he fears he just isn't cut out for fatherhood and is perhaps best utilized in battle. So he joins the French Foreign Legion. But after a few years, he reunites with his family, moves to a town called Mapleton, New York, and enters the police force. He rises to the rank of chief, and many years later, his son, Kevin Garvey Jr., follows in his footsteps. However, twist, on October 14th, 2011, the unthinkable happens, and 140 million people, 2% of the world's population, vanish without a trace. Wow.
Not Thanos related, right?
No.
Okay.
Those left all begin to process the event in different ways. But unfortunately, our dear Glenn, Kevin, begins hearing voices that he believes belong to those departed. And he is declared insane and sent to a mental institution. But fear not, he eventually learns to cope with this madness. And upon release from the mental institution, is compelled towards potentially world-saving ends, which I will not go into detail. because I do not want to spoil the leftovers for anyone.
That's what I thought it was,
Yes.
even though when you said his name, I was like, oh boy, I do not know this.
That's fair.
But then as you just started to describe the plot of this show, it came to me.
Yes.
Very thorough. I like that.
I was thorough because I was trying to remind myself of Kevin Garvey Sr.'s background, and all of these other details are actually canonical to Kevin Garvey Sr. with the 173rd Battalion and him joining the French Foreign Legion for some reason.
Okay.
So I felt like I had to put them in.
Respect. That's
Nice.
great. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll close this out. Winifred. She goes by Albuquerque too. I guess that's maybe kind of like a stage name she's shooting for.
I thought I hallucinated that.
I feel like I remember both names sort of being mentioned. I'll call her Winifred at this stage of things. She's played by Barbara Harris. Every time you see her, she really looks rather frazzled, maybe a little disheveled, and I would just say kind of out of it. Apart from that one moment that you mentioned that I couldn't remember when I put this together, but from my recollection, she kind of sounded a little bit lost and not always very sure of herself. That moment notwithstanding. I think there's a perfectly reasonable explanation for this, and that is because Winifred, it's not actually her name. Her name is Ellen Andrews. And since these primaries are taking place, I think it's safe to say kind of in an earlier part of 1976, Friday the 13th of that year took place on February 13th, which I believe situates us very nicely, I think, for a primary. And it is a very consequential date for Ellen Andrews because it's on that day that in her suburban home, she listens to some country music and she dreams of escaping her life and having an exciting one as an artist. It's happening at the exact same time that in another part of the United States, a young fledgling female musician who shall not be named in New Mexico dreams of a simpler domestic life without the hustle and the heartache of rejection in the music industry. And for reasons that don't really make sense, Ellen finds herself in a freaky body swap with this young woman, and she realizes that she might actually have a shot of actually becoming a country star the way that she dreamed that day in her suburban home. But she's a much younger person at her core, so this journey across country to be discovered does not really go smoothly. She finds herself slumming it for lack of really any street smarts. Well, after this body swap eventually wears off, she returns back to her home to her tween daughter, Annabelle, who does not realize, but at the next Friday the 13th, the tension and misunderstandings that she and her mom are going to have are going to result in yet another inexplicable body swap.
Freaky Friday.
The first one.
Not the Jamie Lee Curtis, Lindsay
Not
Lohan
the,
one.
yes, exactly. No, the Jodie Foster and Barbara Harris Freaky Friday.
Nice.
Excellent. I
There we
love
go.
that one.
I think all of these are pretty strong, to be honest.
Well, thank you.
Well, we had, you said 24 approximately characters to choose from.
Had a lot to pull from.
It's hard to say what characters are major and minor in a film with so many, but I like how we all chose, I think, arguably minor characters.
Yeah. I should say, too, just for a little behind the scenes, we have a pretty good track record of not stepping on each other's toes when we do these.
We do not reveal these beforehand.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's true. Job well done, gang. That's good.
Yeah, likewise.
Any final thoughts that we have about this movie?
I mean, as confused as I was after the first viewing years ago, I loved it then. I still love it now.
Yeah.
Nashville holds up as a filmic and musical masterpiece. I think a trailblazer for ensemble films to come after it. I think, though it did not win, very deserving nominee for Best Picture in 1975. One of the greatest films of the 1970s and just of American film history in general.
Yeah, according to AFI at the very least.
That's true. Where did it fall in the top 100?
I don't think it was on the original list. I think it was on like a revised list.
Oh, that's right, because they were updated, right? Yeah. Anything from you, Madeline?
No, this was such an enjoyable rewatch. I'm so impressed with the craft of this film. It can be a difficult film to process, I think, for even like neurotypical brains, and my ADHD brain was not doing well at times in this movie because there was too much to focus on and I couldn't always pick a thing. But I think that that's part of the appeal of the film for a lot of people, is that you, as you said earlier, Julian, just kind of have to let it wash over you.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah. You can choose when you want to come in and out with certain characters. I totally agree. Yeah.
What about you?
Yeah. This is a really, really fun rewatch. I honestly didn't really know what I was going to get into when I sat down to rewatch this because it had been so long. And I felt like in my mind, I had kind of built this movie up in a way that I didn't know if it was going to really deliver on. And I think it delivered like tenfold. Yeah. I did not see this as part of curriculum when I was in film school, but I feel like if I was ever teaching a course in any kind of collegiate atmosphere, maybe even a high school atmosphere, I think this is an absolute go-to film. There's just so much in this movie that you can parse out if you are a budding cinephile or somebody who's interested in how to tell a story in a really unique way. So
absolutely,
2 thumbs up for Nashville.
I did manage to find, and it was number 59 on the 10th anniversary AFI list, and number 54 was MASH. So
nice.
Altman
Nashville.
coming in strong, Nashville, in the 50s
Nashville.
of the 10th anniversary AFI list.
Nice.
I find it interesting that MASH is seated above Nashville.
From a
that is
quick
interesting.
glance,
Yeah.
I believe that MASH is the highest Altman on this list.
Yeah.
I can't say I totally agree, but
For better or worse, that movie kind of does begin his classic era.
I guess you could say that.
Maybe that's part of it.
I feel like that's not a strong enough reason to put it above Nashville, but that's just my opinion. That's okay.
You know what's above MASH, though, is The Deer Hunter.
Oh, okay.
70s.
back.
You know what?
movies.
I would agree that The Deer Hunter should go above
MASH, but you think Nashville should go above both.
Yes.
Yes.
That's probably
I'm with that.
where I stand.
Yeah.
Guys, next time we meet, we're going to talk about yet another film about musicians on film.
We're going to pivot from talking about country to talking about jazz next time. And, well, Madeline, do you want to say what the film is?
Oh, sure. So for our mise en scene, a film none of us have seen is Spike Lee's Mo Better Blues.
Yes. I'm really excited to see this movie. I
am
feel
too.
like this is a long time coming for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The follow-up to Do the Right Thing. I am very eager.
Yeah.
Totally.
Please follow us on social media. We do have a presence on TikTok, which we work feverishly for, I feel.
Yes.
Yeah. Not to toot our own horn, but there's some fun stuff at Sleepless Cinematic Pod. You can also follow us on Instagram, also Sleepless Cinematic Pod. You can email us. I mentioned it before. If you're going to watch Nashville Girl, I want to know what's going on in that movie. The description of it just seemed really far out. sleeplesscinematicpod@gmail.com.
And if you're on Letterboxd, you can follow me at just my name, Julian_Barthold.
And you can follow me at Patroness of Cats. And at Dougie's request, I have to end this by saying, bye-bye. Bye-bye. You guys are looking at me like I'm crazy. Barbara Jean does this. Bye.
I know what you're doing.
Thank you.
You may say that I ain't free, but it don't worry me.
Awesome. I don't have anything else to contribute on that front, but I'll say bye-bye too. Bye-bye, y'all.
Good night.